The dense jungle heat pressed down on Maya's skin like a wet blanket as she pushed through the emerald undergrowth. 3 days into her solo expedition to document the indigenous medicinal plants of the Amazonian basin, and already her water supplies were running dangerously low. The research grant from Berkeley wouldn't cover a guide, but her doctoral advisor had assured her the marked paths were safe enough for an experienced botanist. "Just remember what the locals told you," she muttered to herself, swatting away a mosquito. "Respect the boundaries. Stay on the paths. And whatever you do, avoid the Rio de los Espíritus, the River of Spirits." Maya checked her GPS coordinates against the worn paper map tucked into her pocket. The blue line of the Forbidden River ran parallel to her route, tantalizingly close. The indigenous Wayani people had been explicit: the river was sacred, protected by ancient spirits who demanded reverence. Any form of contamination would bring dire consequences. She nodded politely during their warnings, mentally filing them away as fascinating cultural beliefs rather than literal threats. After all, she was a scientist. She dealt in empirical evidence, not supernatural folklore. Her canteen sloshed with only an inch of tepid water remaining. The next freshwater stream marked on her map was still 4 hours away, and the humidity was making her head pound. Maya squinted through the dappled sunlight filtering through the canopy. Through a break in the foliage, she could see the glittering surface of the Rio de los Espíritus, its clear waters beckoning. "I just need to refill my canteen," she reasoned. "I won't even touch the water myself. That's respectful enough, right?" But as she veered off the path toward the river, her bladder, full from the morning's coffee, began to protest painfully. Maya hesitated at the river's edge, looking upstream and down. Not another person for miles. The Wayani village was a day's hike away. Nobody would ever know. "It's just biology," she said aloud, as if explaining to the disapproving silence of the jungle. "Water returns to water. It's the cycle of nature." Before her scientific mind could argue further with her desperate body, Maya quickly relieved herself at the edge of the Forbidden River. The small transgression sent ripples across the crystal surface, disturbing the perfect reflection of the canopy above. As she straightened and adjusted her khaki shorts, a strange sensation prickled the back of her neck. The jungle had gone completely silent. No birds, no insects, not even the rustle of leaves in the breeze that had been her constant companion. Just a coincidence, Maya assured herself, her voice sounding unnaturally loud in the stillness. But as she bent to fill her canteen, the water beneath her touch began to glow with an ethereal blue light. Maya jerked backward, stumbling over exposed roots as the glow intensified. "What the words died in her throat as the light shot upward from the river's surface, enveloping her in its unearthly radiance. The light dissipated as quickly as it had appeared, leaving Maya blinking spots from her vision. At first, everything seemed normal. The jungle sounds had returned: the buzz of insects, the distant call of howler monkeys. She patted herself down, checking for, what exactly? Burns? Magical injuries? This was ridiculous. "Get it together, Maya," she chided herself. Bioluminescent algae disturbed by the disturbance. That's all it was. She filled her canteen and turned back toward the path, determined to put the strange incident behind her. But as she walked, she noticed something odd. The plants around her seemed to be leaning inward, their leaves stretching toward her as if drawn by some magnetic force. When she stopped, they stilled. When she moved, they followed. "Heliotropism," she muttered. "Except it's me, not the sun. That's not possible." By evening, Maya had reached her planned campsite, but the unsettling phenomena had only multiplied. Water droplets had danced across her skin when she crossed a small stream. The earth felt unusually warm beneath her sleeping bag. Most disturbing of all, she could swear she heard whispers in the rustling leaves, voices speaking in a language she didn't recognize but somehow understood at a primal level. "You have taken. Now you will give." Maya bolted upright in her tent, heart hammering. "Who's there?" she called, fumbling for her flashlight. The beam revealed nothing but the usual jungle nightscape through the mesh window of her tent. Yet the whispers continued, more insistent now, the river has claimed you. You belong to the spirits now. This isn't happening, Maya said firmly, the scientific part of her brain searching desperately for a rational explanation. Sleep deprivation. Dehydration. Perhaps she'd accidentally ingested a hallucinogenic plant, but when she caught her reflection in her small camping mirror the next morning, denial became impossible. Her eyes, once a mundane brown, now shimmered with the same ethereal blue light she'd seen in the river. And her skin, there was a faint pattern emerging, like delicate scales or leaves, tracing the pathways of her veins. "Oh God," she whispered, touching her face with trembling fingers. The pattern glowed briefly at her touch, then faded. As she packed up camp with shaking hands, Maya noticed something else. The cut on her arm from a thorny branch yesterday had completely healed. Not even a scar remained. And she felt different. Stronger. More aware. She could sense the location of water sources that weren't on her map. She could feel the health of the plants around her, identify them without needing to consult her botanical guides. By midday, Maya abandoned all pretense of continuing her original research. Something profound had happened to her, and she needed answers. She changed course, heading directly for the Wayani village. Their warnings no longer seemed like superstitious folklore. The journey that should have taken a full day somehow took only hours. Maya moved through the jungle with newfound grace, instinctively avoiding hazards, her body seeming to know exactly where to step. When a sudden storm broke overhead, the raindrops appeared to curve around her, leaving her mysteriously dry while the vegetation dripped all around. As she approached the outskirts of the village, an elderly woman was already waiting for her. Draped in traditional garments adorned with symbols similar to the patterns now faintly visible on Maya's skin, the woman showed no surprise at Maya's appearance. "You are the one who disturbed the Rio de los Espíritus," she said, not a question but a statement of fact. Her English was heavily accented but clear. Maya nodded, beyond denying it. "What's happening to me?" The elder, who introduced herself as Nima, led Maya to a small hut on the edge of the village. Inside, the walls were decorated with paintings depicting human figures with the same glowing patterns that marked Maya's skin. "You have been chosen," Nima explained, mixing herbs in a stone bowl. "Or perhaps punished. The spirits of the river do not distinguish, to them it is the same." "Chosen for what?" Maya asked, struggling to reconcile her scientific worldview with the inexplicable changes in her body. "To serve as Aguatera water keeper," Nima replied, offering Maya the bowl. "Drink. It will help you control the transition." Maya hesitated only briefly before accepting the mixture. What choice did she have? The bitter liquid burned going down, but almost immediately, the restless energy that had been building inside her calmed. "There have been others like me?" Maya asked, gesturing to the paintings. Nima nodded. "Throughout our history. Some came to embrace their new purpose. Others," she trailed off, her expression darkening. "Others fought against it and were consumed by the power." "What exactly is this power?" Maya asked, looking down at her hands where tiny droplets of water were forming on her fingertips, responding to her emotions. "The river is one of the few remaining pure sources of ancient magic in this world," Nima explained. "When you contaminated it, you forced it to absorb your essence. In return, it gave you part of itself. You are becoming a vessel for its power, a guardian who can communicate with the waters of the world and the life that depends on them." Maya laughed hollowly. "I'm a botanist, not a guardian of magical rivers. I have a dissertation to finish, a life back in California." Nima's face remained impassive. "That life may no longer be possible for you. At least not until you learn to control what you have become." As if to emphasize the point, Maya's emotions surged and the water bowl between them shattered, the liquid rising into the air in defiance of gravity, forming complex patterns that matched Maya's quickening heartbeat. "You see," Nima said calmly. "The river has chosen you for a reason. Now you must choose whether to fight it or learn from it." Days turned into weeks as Maya remained with the Wayani, learning to control her new abilities under Nima's guidance. The patterns on her skin grew more pronounced, glowing brightest when she was near water. She discovered she could sense impurities in water sources, purify contaminated streams with just her touch, and even influence the weather on a small scale. Your connection grows stronger, Nima observed one morning as Maya practiced drawing moisture from the air, forming it into intricate shapes before returning it to the environment. But you still resist fully embracing what you have become. Maya let the water droplets disperse with a sigh. Because I don't understand the purpose. Why me? Why now? Instead of answering directly, Nima led Maya deeper into the jungle than they had yet ventured. After several hours of hiking, they reached a part of the Rio de los Espíritus Maya hadn't seen before. Here, the once pristine water ran murky and dark. This is why, Nima said grimly. 2 moons ago, strangers came with machines. They dig for gold upstream, using chemicals that poison the water. Our warnings about the river's power were ignored, just as you ignored them. Maya felt a stab of guilt. I'm sorry about that, but I don't see how my condition helps solve industrial pollution. Watch, Nima instructed. Maya knelt by the contaminated water, instinctively recoiling from its wrongness. She could feel the toxins like discordant notes in an otherwise harmonious symphony. Tentatively, she dipped her hand into the water. The effect was immediate. Pain shot up her arm as the pollution fought against her purifying touch. But something deeper was awakening inside her, responding to the river's distress. Her eyes glowed brighter as she pushed through the pain, allowing more of the river's power to flow through her. The toxic water began to clear around her hands, the heavy metals and chemicals separating from the water, condensing into small, dark pellets that sank to the riverbed. When she finally pulled her hands away, exhausted, a 20-foot section of the river ran clear again. But Maya could sense the vastness of the contamination upstream. She barely made a dent. I can't clean an entire river system by hand, Maya said, cradling her aching arm. No, Nima agreed. Not alone, and not in this way. The river has given you its power for a greater purpose. Over the following days, Nima introduced Maya to other members of the tribe who helped piece together the complete story. The Wayani had been guardians of the Rio de los Espíritus for generations, but their numbers had dwindled as younger members left for cities. The mining operation upriver was just the latest threat, but potentially the most devastating. The company, Goldex International, had bribed officials to look the other way regarding environmental regulations. Traditional protests had been ignored, and the tribe lacked the resources for legal battles. The river chose you because you are of both worlds, Nima explained. You understand the science that is being used to destroy our home, but now you also carry the river's power. You can speak in ways others will hear. Maya thought of her connections at Berkeley, her understanding of environmental law and chemistry. With evidence of the contamination and her scientific credentials, she might be able to force regulatory action. But would anyone believe her findings without questioning her strange new appearance? As if reading her thoughts, Nima handed her a necklace, a small vial containing river water. When worn, this will help contain the visible signs of your transformation. But be warned, suppressing the river's power for too long will cause you pain. That night, Maya made her decision. She would return to civilization, document the mining company's violations, and use every scientific and legal tool at her disposal to protect the river. But first, she needed to understand the full extent of the contamination. Using her new abilities, Maya swam upriver with supernatural speed, the water propelling her toward the mining operation. What she discovered horrified her scientist's soul: vast ponds of cyanide-laced water used to extract gold from ore, with clear evidence of leakage into the natural watershed. Workers without protective equipment handled toxic chemicals, many showing signs of poisoning themselves. Maya documented everything with her waterproof camera, collecting water samples in special containers Nima had prepared. But as she was preparing to leave, she was spotted by security guards. "Hey! You can't be here!" They shouted, raising their weapons. Maya dove into the river, but not before a bullet grazed her shoulder. The pain triggered something primal within her. The river's power surged, no longer under her control. The water around her churned and rose, forming a protective barrier. The guards backed away in superstitious terror as Maya's eyes blazed blue and the river responded to her rage. With tremendous effort, Maya calmed herself, letting the water subside. This power could too easily become destructive. She needed to master it completely, not just for her sake but for everyone's. Wounded and shaken, Maya returned to the village. "I have to leave tomorrow," she told Nima as the elder dressed her injury. "The evidence needs to reach the authorities before the company can cover their tracks." Nima nodded sadly. "The river has shown me that your path leads away from us. But remember, Aguatera, you will never truly be apart from the Rio de los Espíritus. Its power flows through you now, wherever you go." 3 months later, Maya stood in the rain outside the Regional Environmental Protection Office in Quito, Ecuador. The evidence she had gathered had sparked an international investigation. Goldex's operations had been temporarily suspended pending a full review, but the company's powerful lawyers were fighting back, questioning the provenance of her samples and her extended absence from her research program. The strain of maintaining her human appearance was taking its toll. The necklace Nima had given her helped, but the river's power had grown stronger within her, fighting against confinement. Each day, Maya had to find some source of water, a shower, a swimming pool, even a heavy rainstorm like today's where she could safely release her abilities for a few precious moments without being seen. As she entered the government building, she spotted a familiar face: Daniel Cruz, an environmental lawyer she'd been working with. His expression was grim. "What's wrong?" Maya asked, already fearing the answer. "Goldex pulled some strings. The judge threw out most of our evidence on procedural grounds. They're resuming operations tomorrow morning." Daniel punched the elevator button in frustration. 3 months of work, gone. Maya felt the water stirring within her, responding to her anger. She clutched the vial at her neck, forcing calm. "There has to be something we can do. Unless you've got irrefutable proof of contamination reaching protected watershed areas, we're out of options through legal channels," Daniel said. "I'm sorry, Maya. I know how personal this is for you." "More than you know," she thought. That night in her hotel room, Maya paced restlessly. The rain lashed against the windows as she weighed her options. The legal route had failed. Her scientific evidence had been dismissed on technicalities. What remained? The river's power pulsed within her, stronger than ever. She removed the necklace, watching as the blue patterns emerged on her skin, glowing in the darkened room. Since returning to civilization, she treated her transformation as something to hide, to suppress. But what if it was actually the solution? She thought back to something Nima had said: "The river chose you because you are of both worlds." Maya made her decision. She would no longer hide what she had become. The next morning, as Goldex executives and government officials gathered for a press conference announcing the resumption of mining operations, Maya approached the podium. Daniel tried to stop her, but she gently pushed past him. "My name is Dr. Maya Chen," she began, her voice steady despite the cameras and microphones pointed at her. "I'm an ethnobotanist from the University of California, Berkeley. 3 months ago, I was conducting research in the Amazon basin when I discovered Goldex's illegal dumping of cyanide and mercury into protected waterways." The Goldex CEO moved to interrupt her, but Maya continued, her voice growing stronger. "You've questioned my evidence. You've used legal technicalities to dismiss scientific fact. So today, I'm offering a different kind of testimony." Maya removed the necklace. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the patterns on her skin became visible, glowing blue under the fluorescent lights. Her eyes shimmered with the river's power. The indigenous Wayani people warned that the Rio de los Espíritus was sacred, protected by ancient forces. I didn't believe them until I experienced it myself. She held up her hands, allowing water to materialize between them, forming a spinning globe. "The river chose me to be its voice. I am living proof of what we're destroying. Cameras flashed frantically. Security guards moved forward uncertainly, but stopped when the water responding to Maya's emotions rose from nearby decorative fountains. I can sense water pollution miles away, Maya continued, her voice echoing strangely as the river's power flowed through her. I can show you exactly where every toxic chemical from Goldex's operation has spread. She closed her eyes, connecting to the waterways that flowed beneath the city, all the way back to the Amazon basin. Using her abilities, she projected images into the floating water sphere, vivid pictures of dead fish, contaminated shorelines, and suffering wildlife. Evidence that couldn't be dismissed as doctored photographs or contaminated samples. This isn't about legends or superstition, Maya said, meeting the eyes of the stunned officials. This is about our relationship with the natural world. When we poison the water, we poison ourselves. I stand before you as both scientist and Aguatera water keeper. Will you listen now? The chaos that followed was immediate. Some fled in fear, others surged forward with questions, cameras never stopped flashing. But Maya stood her ground, the power of the river a steady presence within her. In the days that followed, Maya's transformation became global news. Scientists demanded to study her. Religious leaders called her either a miracle or an abomination. But most importantly, no one could deny the evidence she presented. Under international pressure, the Ecuadorian government permanently revoked Goldex's permits and launched a full-scale cleanup operation. Maya worked closely with both scientists and the Wayani, bridging their worlds. Her unique condition offered unprecedented insights into water systems and pollution detection. The research center she established on the banks of the Rio de los Espíritus combined traditional knowledge with cutting-edge environmental science. 1 year after her transformation, Maya stood by the now healing river with Nima at her side. The patterns on her skin no longer needed to be hidden. They had become a symbol of environmental protection across the Amazon region. You were right, Maya told the elder. The river chose me for a reason. Nima smiled. And you chose to listen, despite your fear. That is the true power. Maya dipped her hand into the clear water, feeling the familiar connection. What had begun as an embarrassing transgression, a thoughtless moment of relief at a river's edge, had transformed her in ways she could never have imagined. She had become a bridge between worlds, between science and spirit, between human need and environmental protection. The river gurgled a response that only she could hear, its ancient voice now a constant companion in her extraordinary new life. You have given back more than you took. The balance is restored. As I stand here today, 5 years after that fateful moment by the river, I can't help but marvel at how a single act of disrespect transformed not just my life, but the lives of so many others. The Rio de los Espíritus Research and Conservation Center now hosts scientists from around the world, all seeking to understand the delicate balance between development and preservation. My body continues to change, the connection with the river growing stronger each year. I can now sense water pollution thousands of miles away, a living early warning system for environmental disasters. The patterns that once frightened me have become beautiful reminders of my purpose. Not everyone believes my story, of course. Many scientific journals have rejected my papers as anecdotal or unverifiable. Some religious groups still protest outside our center, calling me everything from goddess to demon, but the children understand. When I visit schools and show them how water responds to care and intention, their eyes light up with the same wonder I felt when I first discovered my abilities. They don't need explanations or proof, they simply see the truth, that we are not separate from the natural world, but intimately connected to it. The mining company executives who once dismissed me as a troublemaker now consult with our center on sustainable extraction methods. The Wayani people have seen a resurgence of interest in their traditional knowledge, with younger members returning to learn from elders like Nima. As for me, I've learned to embrace the dual nature of my existence. I still publish research papers and teach at universities, but I also sit with indigenous elders to learn their water ceremonies. I testify before congressional committees in Washington, D.C., but also swim with river dolphins in the depths of the Amazon. My greatest joy comes from watching the river heal, seeing fish return to once dead zones, witnessing the regrowth of riverside vegetation, helping villages establish clean water systems. The transformation that began with me has rippled outward, touching countless lives. If you're watching this and wondering what one person can do in the face of environmental catastrophe, remember my story. Sometimes our greatest mistakes lead to our most important purposes. Sometimes the very forces we disrespect are the ones waiting to empower us, if only we're humble enough to listen. The ancients knew what modern science is rediscovering: water is life. How we treat it reflects how we treat ourselves. Whether you believe my transformation was miracle, mutation, or myth doesn't matter. What matters is that you recognize your own connection to the waters of this world. So the next time you stand by a river, lake, or ocean, remember, it's listening. It remembers. And it has more power than we can possibly imagine.